Hi, my name is Frank Owusu. This coming Monday on the 1st of March 2021, students of KNUS who are in first year will be sitting for their first mid-semester examination, and they'll be beginning with Comm skills, a course that is seen and deemed by many as a very challenging one. In view of this, my team and I have come together to organize this online tutorial to aid first years in identifying some very relevant and extremely important areas that they must have to know before they go and sit for the examination. So I'm here entreating every first year student who is watching this video to make a date, sit down and enjoy the video from start to end. And I'm extremely confident that if you are done watching the video, you'll be better prepared and well positioned to take this examination and come out with flying colors. Please remember, the impossible is nothing. You came here to succeed. The start of the journey is as important as the end. Start right and you'll definitely end right. My name is Frank Owusu. Thank you for watching.
Hello everyone, I'm Sandra from the Department of English, and I'll be taking you through some topics that you've treated even as you prepare and write your Midsem examination. So you realize that from class we've treated word classes, structural types of sentence, functional types of sentence, errors in sentence. So I'll briefly take you through them. Then the key areas you are supposed to pay particular attention to even as you study. So we are starting with word classes. So you realize that word classes are words or the family that the words we use in our daily language belong to. So as humans, we have families, and words also belong to particular families. So we are saying that these families are nouns, adjectives, adverbs. We have a number of them. We have about 9 of them. So they are the word classes. So I'll take you through them. The first one is noun. So when you hear noun, you know that nouns are words that name people, places, or things. So when you're studying, you're supposed to take particular attention to how to identify particular nouns in constructions. Maybe you'll be given a paragraph to identify nouns in them. So you're supposed to pay attention to the form nouns take. So you know that some nouns are likely to end in tion, the suffix tion, ic, a number of them, al. So you have to pay attention to them. We have some types of nouns. We have abstract nouns, we have common nouns, we have proper nouns, we have count nouns. So you are supposed to know these types and how they are used in constructions, because we are not going to ask, the lectures are not going to ask you to define words or word classes, but rather apply the knowledge you've gained in them. So you have to know them. So example of proper nouns, we have Mary, we have KNST. So they name specific things or specific people. We have common nouns like boy, girl. We have count nouns like chair, bag. We have uncountable nouns like sugar, sand. We have abstract nouns like joy, like peace. Yes, so you are supposed to know them. Then you look at the plural formation of nouns. You realize that if you want to form the plurality of a particular noun, you are supposed to add sometimes s or es depending on the particular noun. Others do the vowels in the nouns undergo changes. So example, you have a word, a noun like mouse, the plural will be mice. So there will be changes, internal changes in the construction of that particular noun. Others, we have boy, the plural will be boys. So you have to take particular attention to these, the plural formation of the specific nouns that we have. Okay, so that you don't get confused when you are given the plural of particular nouns to identify. Also, we look at nouns and possession. When you hear possession, it means ownership, a particular noun owning something. So how do nouns indicate ownership or possession? So you realize that we have the apostrophe s. When you see the girl's bag, you realize that the girl is a noun, then you bring apostrophe s to indicate that the girl is owning a particular thing. So we have the apostrophe s. Then we also have the possession pronouns like mine. The bag is mine. My bag. Yours. Theirs. Hers. And with this particular possession, you don't bring apostrophe like the apostrophe s. So when you hear the bag is hers, it's not her apostrophe s. No. So when you get that, it's wrong. But you have the hers, you have yours. Yes, sorry for that. Yes, so with that particular type of possession, you don't bring the apostrophe s, you just bring the s. So when you're writing a letter and you write at the end your subscription, you write yours faithfully. You're not supposed to bring the apostrophe. I know most of you are tempted to bring the apostrophe because you think that the possessive apostrophe s is supposed to be required, but that's not the case. So you are supposed to take particular note of that. So we continue. And with the possession too, it's not always that you have a particular word or one word as the subject of a sentence. There are instances you might have two words or a number of words acting as the subject of a sentence. Yes, so when you are indicating possession, when two nouns acting as a subject indicate possession to one thing, then you bring the apostrophe s to the latter noun. So example, Akosia and Ame's bag. You realize that Akosia, we didn't bring apostrophe s, but we brought the apostrophe s to Ames because they are all owning one thing. So when two nouns acting as the subject or coming or showing possession, they are indicating that they show possession to one thing, then you bring the apostrophe s to the latter one, not the two of them. So not Akosia's and Ame's bag. You realize that bag too is singular, so it means that they are showing possession to one thing. So you bring the apostrophe s to the latter noun. Please, do you get it? Then we have other instances where the two nouns may indicate possession to two different things. So with that instance, you'd have to bring apostrophe s to the first noun and the second noun. And the noun that they are showing possession to should also be plural. So we have Akosia's and Ame's bags. But for the first one, the two of them are showing possession or owning one thing. So you bring the possession indicator, which is the apostrophe s, to the latter one. Then we continue to the functions of noun. That's the most important thing. Realize that nouns function as subject, they function as objects, and with the objects we have direct and indirect objects. Then they also function as appositors. So I'll take you through the subject. You realize that every sentence has a subject and a predicate. The subject part is what the sentence is talking about, then the predicate is what is talking about the subject, and the predicate is always introduced by the main verb in the construction, whereas the subject position is always before the main verb, and the predicate is the verb and everything that comes after the verb. So we are saying that nouns function as subjects in sentences. So example, Amma is going to school. It is a sentence because it makes sense. It has a subject and it has a predicate. So the subject is Amma, then is going to school. Is going as the verb, then to school, indicating place. Okay, so Amma is a noun and it is functioning as a subject because it is coming before the main verb. So that's the subject position in every sentence, everything before the main verb. So we are saying that nouns function as subjects. So when you are given a construction and they underline a particular noun and you are being asked to identify the function, check whether that particular word which has been underlined is coming after the main verb or before the main. When it's before the main verb, then it's the function of a subject. then you know that that particular noun is functioning, or that particular word is functioning as the subject. Then they also function as objects. And before you know that a particular noun is functioning as the object, you have to first determine the type of verb used in the construction, whether that verb is a transitive verb or intransitive, because transitive verbs do take object. So when you identify the verb, then you'll be able to tell that that particular thing or that particular noun coming after the verb is object or not. So the child sleeps early. The child sleeps early. So that construction, sleeps, there is not functioning transitively, because early is indicating time. Okay, so before you know that a particular noun is functioning as the object, you have to first know the verb. So you'd have to go back and read the verbs that we have. We have transitive, intransitive, we have linking verbs. So you have to know them. That will help you to determine whether we have complements coming after the verb, or we have adjectives coming after the verb, or we have adverbials coming after the verb. So an example of a noun functioning as the object: I gave her flowers. I gave her flowers. So I is the subject, gave is the verb, then her is an object, as well as flowers. So I mentioned earlier that we have two of the objects. We have the direct and indirect. So how would you determine that this particular object is direct, which particular one is not direct? First, you have to know which one is suffering directly from the action of the verb. So I gave her flowers. I gave what? So I gave her flowers. So flowers is suffering from the action of giving. So you gave flowers to her. It's just like giving flowers to her. So you first have to know the verb and which one is suffering directly from the action of the verb. So flowers become the direct object, whereas her becomes the indirect. And also you can tell a direct object from indirect object when the indirect object is mostly preceded by preposition. So I gave the flowers to her. So to is a preposition, so her becomes indirect. Then I gave the flowers. There is a determiner and it is preceding the direct object. So you can also distinguish between the direct and indirect objects with what comes before them. So when the object is preceded by a preposition, then you know that it's indirect. But when it's preceded by a determiner, then you know that it is direct. But the first surest way to know is which one is suffering directly from the action of the verb. Hence, before you can get an object, that verb in the construction should be an action verb. Okay, so that you'll be able to know that a particular thing coming after is suffering, because objects are sufferers of the action of verbs. They suffer from the actions of verbs. So before you can get an object, the verb should be an action verb. Then we have complement. We have nouns functioning as complements, but before a particular noun can function as a complement, the verb that comes after that particular complement should be a linking verb. So you have to go and look at linking verbs. We have is, we have so I am a girl. I am a girl. So girl is a noun and it's coming after the linking verb am. She is a teacher. She is a teacher. So she is the subject, is a verb, auxiliary verb, and it's a linking verb. It links she to teacher, and teacher is a noun. So nouns functioning as complements, they complement each other. Girl is complementing the subject she. Okay, then we have appositive. Appositive can be a verb, appositive can be a noun or a group of words that rename or further explain a particular noun that has been set beside it. So an example is Abedi Pele, the footballer, is here. Abedi Pele, the footballer is here. So the footballer becomes an appositive. It is set beside Abedi Pele, and it's further explaining or renaming Abedi Pele. And the footballer is a noun. So we can see that nouns function as appositives. Yes, so you have to take key notes of these areas, because as I mentioned earlier, you're not going to be tested on the definitions, but how you understand those definitions and how they work in constructions. So we move on to verbs. I wouldn't spend much time. You are supposed to read extensively on verbs. So we have action verbs. Someone will say that a verb is a doing word or an action word, but we have auxiliary verbs too, like is. When you hear is, it does not indicate or denote any action, but it's a verb. So we can't restrict the meaning of verbs to only action or doing words. Okay, so we have action verbs, then we have auxiliary. So the action verbs, they denote action. When you hear sleep, you know that you are supposed to do something. When you hear sweep, you are supposed to do something. When you hear sing, you are supposed to do something. They are the action verbs. Then when you get auxiliary verbs, you have three classes of them. Sorry, we have be, we have, and we have do. Under be, we have is, we have we have was, we have were, we have been, and we have be. Then under have, we have, we have has, we have had, we have having. Then under do, we have do, we have does, we have did, we have doing. So you are supposed to know the auxiliary verbs, and these are the primary auxiliary. Then we have the modal auxiliary. The modal auxiliary, we have can, could, we have may, might, we have ought, we have shall, should, we have will, would, etc. You have a number of them, so you are supposed to go out then read them, because they will help you better understand the sentences you are supposed to construct and identify in the other topics that will be treated. So we also have transitive. I mentioned transitive when we were talking about nouns, that nouns function as object, but you have to know whether the verb there is a transitive verb in order to tell that what comes after is a transitive verb. So a transitive verb takes an object. Transitive verb takes objects, so you are supposed to know them. Then we have intransitive. The intransitive, they do not take objects, but rather they take adverbials. Adverbials can be an adverb or a group of words functioning as adverbs. So we have in the room. In the room is an adverbial because it's functioning as the place. When you say the child is in the room, and they've underlined in the room is a prepositional phrase indicating place where the child is, and it's functioning as an adverbial because we know that adverbs give us place, time, they indicate those things. So when a group of words indicates place, time, manner, those things, then you know that they are functioning as adverbials. So example, she stopped the car. She stopped the car. The verb stopped is functioning transitively because it's taking the car, which is the object. It is demanding something after its usage. So she stopped the words, the car. The car becomes the object. So the verb stop becomes a transitive verb. You can also have he gave out the phone. He gave out the phone. Gave out what? The phone. So the object is the phone, and the verb gave out is functioning transitively because it requires a particular thing to come after it. Then we have boiled the egg. Boiled what? The egg. So the egg becomes an object coming directly after the verb, which is a transitive verb. Then we have intransitive. I said they do not take objects, rather they take adverbial. So she slept well. Well is not an object. It's indicating the manner the person slept. Okay, so the girl slept well. It's indicating how the girl slept well. So well becomes an adverbial. And we have walked to the theater. She walked to the theater. She walked to the theater. So to the theater becomes an adverbial. We have to, then theater. So they become adverbial. They are indicating the place where the person walked to. So the verb walked can function transitively or intransitively depending on what comes after that particular verb. Okay. So then we have tense and aspect in verbs. When you hear tense and aspect, what's supposed to come to mind? So tense, we know past tense, present, we have future time. So tense is when the bare form of a verb has been added to indicate presentness or past. So the bare form of a verb, like cook is bare. Nothing has been added to the words, or nothing has been added to the verb cook. But when you add s, it becomes cooks. She cooks every day. So it indicates the presentness, how present the tense is. When you add ed to it, it becomes she cooked. So she cooked, indicating that the action was taken in the past. Okay, so tense is when the bare form of a verb has been added to show distinction between time. So whether in the present or in the past or even the future. In the future, we have indicators like will, shall, or also sometimes you can bring adverbials to indicate that, okay, an action will take place in the future, meaning it's not taking place, it hasn't taken place, but it is yet to take place. So you're supposed to take key notes of those things. Then we have the aspect. Aspect is how we perceive the action of a verb, and we have two ways we perceive the action, whether they are continuing or continuous, or progressive, and whether they are perfective. So progressive is when the action is ongoing, and perfective is when the action has already taken place. So how would you know that a particular verb in a construction is indicating the aspect of progression, or indicating the aspect of perfective or perfectiveness? So this is how you get to know. When with the continuing or continuous tense and aspect combination, you have to have the form of verb be. So I stated, or I listed the form of verb be, the variants that we have. We have is, we have we have were, we have was. So the form of verb be plus a verb in its ing form. So we can have she is cooking. We have the form of verb be is, and we have the verb in its ing form. It's indicating continuity, it's indicating progression. So it is continuous, progressive tense or aspect. So she is cooking, she is cleaning. So it is the form of verb be, then the verb in its ing form. So that's the present continuous. Then we have the past continuous. That's when the form of verb be is in its past tense plus the verb in its ing form. So they were cleaning, they were dancing, she was singing. So the form of verb be is in the past, then the verb in its ing form. Then when it comes to the perfective one, we said the action had already taken place. So that one, we have the form of verb have plus the verb in its past participle. So the form of verb have plus the verb in its past participle. So we can have, for the present perfective, we can have I have swept, I have swept, she has sung already. So you realize swept is the past participle for sweep. Then we have, which is in its present tense. Then we have has, it's in its present tense. Then we have sung, which is the past participle for sing. So I have swept, she has sung. Then comes to the past. The past, you have to have the form of verb have in its past tense. So had, I had drunk. So drunk is the past participle for drink. Then I had risen. So risen is the past participle for rise. Okay, so in order to get the tense and aspect combination, you have to know the ing form of the verb, know the form of verb be to combine to the ing form to indicate the continuous tense aspect combination, and the form of verb have to use plus the past participle of the verb to indicate perfective tense and aspect combination. So if you don't know the past tense of some verbs and their past participle, you don't want to go back and revise. Okay, then we move on to adjectives. Adjectives, they modify nouns. Okay, so we have example: the beautiful girl, a sad story. So beautiful is modifying girl. Sad story, sad is telling about the story, indicating how the story is. Okay, so adjectives, they modify nouns. And for adjectives, we have comparative, then we have the superlative. When you are comparative is when you are comparing two things or people, and the superlative is when you are comparing more than two. Okay, so example, we have beautiful. Beautiful has 3 syllables, so beautiful. So when you're comparing two people with respect to the adjective beautiful, we have a particular rule that you are supposed to take. So you can't just say you're comparing two things or two people with respect to beautiful without knowing that rule. So when you're comparing two people, you add more to the adjective which has more than 1 syllable. So she is more beautiful than you. She is more beautiful than you. Okay, so we have other instances to where the adjective has just 1 syllable. So that one you just add er to the adjective, like smart. Smart is an adjective. So when you're comparing two people with respect to the adjective smart, you have to add er to the end of smart. So she is smarter than you. Okay, but when the adjective is more than a syllable, so beautiful, intelligent, so more intelligent than you. So when the adjective is having more than 1 syllable, then you know that you're supposed to add more when you're comparing two things or two people. And when you're comparing 3, then you add most. The most beautiful in the class, the most intelligent in the class. But we have the ones that you add er for it, comparative. When it comes to the superlative, you just add est, so smartest girl in the class, or the nicest story I've heard. So we have, when you have to take notes, when the adjective is having just a syllable, then you add er when comparing two things or two people. Then you add est when you're comparing more than two. But when the adjective has more than 1 syllable, you have to add more when comparing two people or things. Then the most, you add the most to the adjective that has more than 1 syllable.